Welcome to the Newsmakers Podcast. I'm Billy Hollowell, and this is a show where we go behind the headlines every day to bring you an interview with a pastor, entertainer, politician, or other notable news figure. And this is a show, again, it's daily, but it's based on our weekly TV show, which is also called Newsmakers. You can watch it on the CBN News channel and also on our YouTube page. And on this show, every day, we dive deep. It's a little more longer form with one of the people who you will often see on our Newsmakers show or across the CBN News platforms. On today's Newsmakers, we are diving into a very interesting dispute between an Ohio church and a local city, the City of Bryan. There is a dispute over the housing of the homeless. We're welcoming Ryan Gardner, an attorney with First Liberty, to break down what he says is an illegal, unlawful harassment on the part of city officials against Dad's Place, a church there in Bryan, Ohio. With no further ado, here is Ryan Gardner. So Ryan, this story over Dad's Place has been a really interesting story arc. You know, we thought we were at a point a couple of months ago, based on my purview, you'll be able to tell us a little more, but where this was settled and the issues with the city were going to be resolved. Where do things currently stand, though?
Well, to go to your point, we were hopeful that that was going to be the case. We were working cordially with the city in good faith, trying to address any of the alleged concerns that they had. But it seems like good faith only ran one way. While the church was doing what it said it would do, the city was feigning cooperation while in fact doing nothing more than building a new case against the church. That's really what has happened. And so on April 24th, the fire chief, the assistant fire chief, and a police officer burst through the church's doors at 5:30 a.m. for a surprise, unannounced fire inspection. And upon completing that inspection, they immediately cited the church for new violations which had never been discussed before. Out of nowhere now, the city is saying that the church is required to have fire sprinklers installed to do its 24-hour ministry. Now, here's the funny thing about that. The church has now been inspected 6 or 7 times, and in each of the previous fire inspection reports, never once did they mention sprinklers. So this is nothing more than an example of the city, again, moving the goalpost. And it's clear that no matter what the church does, no matter what changes it makes, the city is always going to find something new in an effort to stop this ministry from continuing.
And just, you know, let's backtrack a little bit too, because these are the latest things that happened. And obviously it sounds like you all were surprised by this in light of the conversations that you were having with the city, feeling as though things had moved to a positive direction. But so people understand, Dad's Place is a church, and the church has been allowing the homeless, people in need, to stay there, to be inside the building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whenever they need to be there. That is something, according to the city, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, that is not okay, despite the fact that in the beginning, according to the pastor of the church, in the beginning, the police were actually forwarding people to the church and sort of, you know, telling people, hey, you can go there for help. But at some point, there was an issue where they said, no, you're violating zoning laws, correct?
That's exactly right. So the church actually began operating in 2018, and I believe they moved to the building they are currently in sometime in 2019. And even before the church opened its 24-hour ministry last year, they were still regularly allowing people to stay in the church overnight. If there was an extreme weather event, as you might often encounter, especially in those Ohio winters, they opened their doors and they blasted it out on social media. Hey, if you need a place to come stay, to get out of the cold, come to Dad's Place. And funny enough, it's not just the church that was doing this, but the city's own police on their social media would tell people to go to Dad's Place if they needed a place to go. And you're absolutely right that for years the city has brought people to the church knowing full well that those people would be spending night in the church overnight. And even after the church started its 24-hour ministry, police continued to bring people in. In fact, that was really the only contact that the church had with the city. What was a great cooperative relationship with the Bryan Police Department, where they would bring people to Dad's place instead of to jail, essentially.
Why do you think that the city of Bryan, purportedly changed their posture on Dad's church? Was there an event? Was there a moment? What was it in your view? And maybe, I mean, at the very least, you could tell us their arguments, maybe help us understand why they're not allowing the church to serve the community in this way.
I mean, that's part of this that is very puzzling to me, because there was no event. There was just a change in how the city was treating Dad's place. And to me, this all goes back to the mayor, Carrie Schlade. For whatever reason, a city official who we believe to have been Mayor Schlade lodged a complaint against the church, which resulted in the city showing up on the church's doorstep and posting a sign on it saying that it had to cease and desist from its 24-hour ministry within 10 days, out of nowhere. No conversations, no recognition of the good work, no attempts to try to find a way to allow the church to continue its ministry. Just, you need to shut down now. And it's interesting. Notice how before it was zoning violations, right? The previous criminal charges were 18 charges related to violating the city's zoning code. They've moved the goalposts since then. They've shifted their strategy, and now they're going towards the fire code as a new stick to hit the church with.
So this most recent, they were telling the church most recently on the 24th when this happened that they had 10 days, correct, to stop the ministry? That's what you said?
In November, that's what they said. Here's
that's what they said
the wild part here. So they show up on last week. They come in, do their inspection, issue the citation, and within 48 hours, they have filed criminal charges against the pastor for a quote-unquote unlawful change in use of the building. Now, the church has always been a church. There is no change of use. The pastor has been doing this exact ministry for years. And beyond that, they're saying that the church didn't get permission from the state of Ohio through the form of a certificate of occupancy to do what they're doing. In the interim, between earlier this year and now, the church has applied for that very thing. So the city didn't even wait for the state of Ohio to weigh in on any of this, and perhaps to give its blessing to the church to say, we've reviewed your application, we see nothing wrong with what you're doing, and in fact, this is a perfectly legitimate and safe place to be doing this, and to go forth and do it. The city couldn't wait on that. And they also gave the church 7 days to install a sprinkler system in that church. Now, I'm not a contractor, but I don't think that you could even get a quote from a contractor for a project of that magnitude within 7 days, let alone install it. So they gave them no time at all. The message again was clear: get the people out.
Has the church gotten the people out, or are they continuing to house people?
No, the church has not gotten people out. And in fact, if you were to ask the Pastor Chris, he would say that he can't do that. His conscience would not allow it. His faith would not allow it. These are some of the most vulnerable, hurt, and broken people in this community. People who have never really felt safe, maybe, and have never really had a family. But they found both of those things at the church. If the city took the time to actually talk to the people who are at the church, they would say that this is their family. They would say, if it were not for this church, if it were not for Dad's place taking me in the way that they did, I wouldn't be here today.
So these new criminal charges, I know that the previous criminal charges, and that's interesting too, the idea that the goalposts have been a little bit moved here on this, but the original criminal charges essentially were those dropped then back in February? I know that was part of the discussion that was going on. Those were dropped then, right?
Yeah, those were dropped.
Okay. So these new criminal charges, what do they carry with them if he were to be found guilty of this?
Well, for one, they're trying to impose a $1,000 per day fine if the church were to stay open. So that in itself, I mean, in a month, you're talking $30,000. In a year, $365,000. So a huge amount of money on top of potential jail time for Pastor Chris. And that's really what it seems like the city wants to do. They will not stop until the church is shut down, those people are back on the streets, and Pastor Chris is sitting in a jail cell.
So what happens next? Obviously, we know that this is, this is really kicked back up. We have a major, obviously, stalemate here, and you have the government coming back against the church. What do you plan to do to challenge this?
Well, we have a hearing on May 13th to seek injunctive relief from the court to stop this unlawful harassment and lawfare being waged by the City of Bryan.
And then from there on, we will see where this goes. If people want to get more information on the case, keep up to date on it, where can they do that?
They can go to firstliberty.org to hear the latest on what's happening in this case.
I appreciate you taking us through, breaking it all down. This is a story that has been out there. Some people may not be aware of it. So thank you for giving us some of the backstory. Appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
That's all for today's Newsmakers podcast. Be sure to tune in for the next episode of the show, and also head over to the CBN News YouTube channel and the CBN News channel to watch Newsmakers every week. We'll see you soon.